I, 35F, recently tied the knot. You'd think it was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, right? Well, not exactly. What was supposed to be a beautiful celebration turned into a chaotic circus, thanks to my lovely family. Instead of enjoying the moment, I found myself dodging drama at every turn. They seemed determined to ruin my wedding, and honestly, they almost succeeded. But I'm not one to just sit back and take it, so I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. Now they're acting like I'm the villain in this whole story. I need some outside perspective here, so let me tell you exactly what went down. Let me give you a bit of backstory. I'm the youngest in a family of 5. First, there's my mom, 60F, the textbook definition of an almond mom, always on some new fad diet and judging everything you eat. Then there's my dad, 62M, who pretty much only cares about money. If it doesn't involve stocks or profit, he can't be bothered. Now, let's talk about my oldest sister, 38F. To put it nicely, she's a bit of a nightmare. We've never had a good relationship. She's always been the golden child, while I was just there. Growing up, she had this talent for making my life miserable, constantly humiliating me and twisting things to make me look like the bad guy. The only person in the family I actually get along with is my grandma, 82F. She's the sweetest, most down-to-earth person, and honestly, the only one who's ever made me feel like I mattered. As for me, I was shipped off to boarding school for most of my life, so I never really developed a close bond with anyone in the family. While my sister got all the attention, I was more or less out of sight, out of mind. Growing up, I was pretty close to my auntie, 58F, too. She was like the cool, fun adult in my life. But when I was around 13, she suddenly moved out, right before I got shipped off to boarding school. Whatever connection I had with her, and honestly, with the rest of my family, just faded away. Now, let me tell you how I ended up in boarding school. The short version? It's all thanks to my sister. She absolutely hated that mom and dad decided to have a second kid. She wanted all the attention for herself, so she made it her life's mission to make mine a living hell. I became her favorite scapegoat for everything. My sister had this habit of breaking things around the house, and then somehow I'd always get the blame. She'd put on her best innocent face, crocodile tears and all, and tell them some ridiculous story about how I did it. The final straw was when she broke a precious family heirloom, a crystal bowl that had been in our family for generations. She swore up and down that I was playing around and knocked it over. Mom and Dad were furious, and instead of listening to me, they decided I was too much trouble and packed me off to boarding school. My parents were pretty much missing in action for most of my life. They never really showed up for any of my school events. I was mostly on my own, and after a while, it just stopped bothering me. It became normal to not have them around. When I finished school and moved back to my hometown for college, I thought maybe things would be different. I was back living with my sister, and the drama started up again. Living with her was like stepping back into a war zone. She still managed to make everything about her and turn every little thing into a conflict. The final straw was prom night. I caught her with my boyfriend, and she didn't even bother to hide it. It was like she wanted me to see her flaunting him in front of me. I'd had enough. I told Mom about it, hoping for some support or at least a little understanding, but she just brushed it off like it was no big deal. So, I made the decision to leave. I moved to a different city for college and university, cutting ties with my family and starting fresh. While I was building my new life, I met someone amazing. I fell in love, and we got engaged. It was a beautiful experience, he treated me so well, and for once, I felt like I was truly cherished. We decided to get married, and it was everything I dreamed of and more. When I told my family about the engagement, their reaction was pretty underwhelming. It was like they were barely interested, just a casual, "Oh, okay, fine." They didn't seem to have any major issues with it, but they weren't exactly thrilled either. The wedding planning began. My mom suggested I come back home and have the wedding there. Honestly, I wasn't too sure about that idea. I'd made a life for myself in my current town, and I wanted to celebrate the occasion here. So, I decided to stay put and plan the wedding locally. When it came to the actual planning, my parents were pretty much absent. They didn't offer much help or input. On the other hand, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were incredibly supportive, and they really stepped up and helped with everything. Now, it was time to send out the invitations. After they went out, I had a conversation with Mom, and she mentioned that I'd made a mistake on the invites. I hadn't included my sister's name. Before I could even explain, she brushed it off and said it was no big deal because she'd already informed my sister about the wedding and that they'd all be there. I was like, hold on a second. That wasn't an error, I didn't include her intentionally. I don't want her at my wedding. But Mom just brushed me off, acting like I was throwing a tantrum. She told me not to be silly and that it was a minor mistake. When I pointed out that my sister had slept with my ex and that's why I didn't want her there, Mom got furious. She argued that I was being unreasonable and holding grudges. She insisted that I shouldn't let old grudges affect family relationships and that I should use this opportunity to rebuild our bond. I wasn't having any of it. I told Mom that there had never been any real family unity and I had always been sidelined. I made it clear that I didn't want my sister at my wedding, period. Mom countered by saying that if I didn't let my sister come, no one from the family would show up. That was the last straw. I was furious, and I couldn't believe she was using that as leverage. I didn't even bother arguing anymore. I just ended the call and decided to stick to my guns about not having her at the wedding. I spent some time fuming over everything, and then it hit me. My family had never really cared about my feelings. If they were threatening not to attend my wedding just because I didn't want my sister there, why should I care about their opinions? So, I decided to take a stand. I planned to invite someone else, someone my family had major beef with, my aunt. It was a bit of a rebellious move, but it felt right. If my family wanted to play games, I'd just invite someone who would shake things up and show them that I wasn't going to let them dictate my day. Let me give you a bit of backstory about my aunt. She was always Dad's least favorite, and there was this ongoing tension between them. Despite that, she was always super kind and loving towards me and my sister. But then something happened, I'm not entirely sure what, but there was a huge fallout, and she ended up moving away. Over the years, I pieced together that Dad had somehow framed her and stirred up problems between her and Grandma. There were also issues with her marriage, which, as far as I could tell, were mostly Mom's doing. I never got the full story, but it was clear that Dad had done a real number on her. So, I decided to reach out to my aunt. Reaching out to her was a bit tricky at first. She didn't respond to my attempts to contact her, so I decided to take matters into my own hands and visit her in person. Fortunately, she didn't live too far from me, though I was surprised to find out she had been in the area all along. When I showed up at her place, she was a bit cold initially, but after I explained everything, how my mom, dad, and sister had treated me and how I had always felt neglected, she invited me in. We sat down for tea, and she started to open up about what had happened between her and the family. Here's the scoop: Aunt had a boyfriend whom Grandma didn't approve of. Mom and Dad took it upon themselves to fill Grandma's head with lies, making her believe that Aunt was planning to elope and didn't care about Grandma's feelings. They told Aunt that Grandma had given her an ultimatum: either break up with the boyfriend or be disowned. The situation escalated quickly. Grandma suffered a minor shock and had to be hospitalized. Dad told Aunt that Grandma didn't want to see her and would disown her, which wasn't true at all. Dad's manipulation continued when he claimed Aunt had abandoned Grandma in her time of need, making Aunt feel utterly betrayed and rejected. Mom and Dad didn't stop there. They continued to spread rumors, claiming Aunt was selfish and heartless, and accused her of not caring about the family's reputation. They even went so far as to say Aunt had stolen money from Grandma's account to cover her boyfriend's expenses, which was a complete fabrication. I managed to convince my aunt to come to my wedding, and later tried to clear things up with Grandma. It took some persuading, but she agreed to attend. I also told her about how my sister had treated me and how my family was insisting that I invite her as well. Aunt agreed to come, even though she wasn't thrilled about it. On the wedding day, things started off rocky. My sister showed up with my mom, and they immediately started making snide remarks. My mom was giving my sister all her attention until she saw Aunt. The look of shock and anger on her face was priceless. Mom came up to me fuming, demanding to know why I had invited Aunt. I told her that we needed to rebuild our family bonds and that it was a chance to be a happy family again. Mom was livid. She wanted to make a scene, but I had already informed my sister-in-law about the situation. She stepped in and helped manage things, ensuring that we could proceed with the ceremony smoothly despite the tension. We managed to have a lovely ceremony. I could feel my family's daggers aimed at me as I walked down the aisle. The ceremony was beautiful, and for once, I felt like I was making my own choices and standing up for myself. After the wedding ceremony, it was time for the reception, but that's when things went off the rails. My aunt had taken Grandma to a separate room to talk, and my parents were frantically trying to get in to see what was going on. They were practically banging on the door, desperate to interfere. Meanwhile, my sister was making snide comments about how the wedding wasn't up to par and how the decorations were cheap. My sister-in-law had quick and classy responses, like pointing out how everyone had a great time and how the focus should be on the newlyweds rather than making petty remarks. I was exhausted and didn't want to deal with any of this drama, especially not my sister's constant negativity. I told my parents to give Aunt and Grandma some space and let them talk privately, but instead of listening, they started yelling at me, accusing me of trying to ruin their so-called happy family. They said I was being selfish and trying to create more drama. My husband and mother-in-law had had enough. They stepped in and threatened to throw my parents out if they didn't stop making a scene. At this point, Dad lost it. He insulted me in front of everyone, saying things like he never liked me and that I was always the problem child. He called me a disappointment and said I'd always been difficult to deal with. I felt like I was going to break down, so my husband stepped up and called security. They came in and escorted my parents out of the venue. It was a tough moment, but I was grateful for my husband's support. The reception continued, and despite the chaos, we managed to salvage what was left of the night and enjoy ourselves. After the ceremony wrapped up, I finally had a moment to check my phone, only to find it flooded with messages from my family. And that's when it hit me, I had completely forgotten about my sister. I assumed she left after my parents were thrown out, but no, she was still at the wedding. Not only that, but she had gone live on social media, in full tears, ranting about how ungrateful I was for throwing our parents out of my own wedding. Apparently, she was spinning this whole sob story for her followers, saying how I had been a nightmare my entire life. She claimed that I'd always been jealous of her, that I never appreciated the love and support the family gave me. She made it sound like I was some selfish brat who mistreated her, always trying to one-up her or push her aside. She said I ruined the family's reputation by inviting Aunt and then had the audacity to disrespect my parents on the most important day of my life. Her live stream was full of exaggerated drama, like claiming I'd always been a problem and that I was difficult to love, and how she had tried so hard to be a good sister but I had pushed her away. According to her, she was the perfect daughter who carried the family, while I was some rebellious, ungrateful disaster who didn't know the meaning of family. The comments were eating it up too, with people sending her sympathy and saying things like, "How could your own sister do that, and you deserve better, you're too good for her." I couldn't believe it. She was hijacking my wedding to paint herself as the golden girl. Instead of enjoying my wedding, I was completely trapped by my sister's drama. It was like I couldn't escape my family's chaos even on my big day. I needed to get away, so I called Grandma, hoping for some sanity. Turns out Grandma and Aunt had been together the whole time after their little one-on-one during the wedding. When Grandma picked up, she actually sounded kind of peaceful. I asked her how it went, and she said that she and Aunt had finally talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Apparently, Aunt opened up about everything that happened all those years ago. She told Grandma about how Mom and Dad twisted the whole situation with her boyfriend. Aunt explained how she tried to tell Grandma the truth, but by then, Mom and Dad had already filled Grandma's head with lies. They started piecing things together right there at my wedding. Grandma even said that over the years, she had been hurt and confused by how Aunt just vanished. She always wondered why Aunt never reached out, especially after Grandma's health scares. Aunt said she tried, but every time, Dad or Mom blocked her. One time, Aunt had sent flowers to Grandma after a surgery, but Mom told Grandma they were from a family friend. There were calls Aunt made that never got through because Mom would handle them. There was even a birthday when Aunt sent a card, and Mom conveniently forgot to pass it on. Grandma apologized, saying she regretted not questioning things sooner, and Aunt admitted she'd been too angry and scared to reach out after everything. They cried, hugged, and just like that, years of tension melted away. So, while I was dealing with my sister's meltdown and my parents' outbursts, at least Grandma and Aunt managed to make peace. If anything good came out of this wedding, it was that. I decided to sue my sister for defamation because I'm so done with this family. My aunt and grandma are supporting me, and said that she also wants to sue my parents for manipulation and mental harassment. Now my parents are blaming me and saying that I caused all these problems. Seriously, AITA for not giving in to my parents' demands and inviting my aunt? Or AITA for standing up for myself? I need opinions. Update 1. It's been a week since the wedding and things have been interesting, to say the least. First off, thanks to everyone who commented and offered support. I've been reading through everything and it's helped me gain some perspective. Now, for those calling me stupid and saying I deserve it because I put up with my family for so long and shouldn't have invited them, guys, be realistic. This is my family we're talking about. I love them, of course. Now I have other opinions, but back then, I never imagined they would stoop this low. Anyway, here's the update. My mother-in-law is a bit annoyed by all the drama, which I totally get. I mean, who wants to deal with this nonsense right after a wedding, right? But honestly, she's been great overall. Just a little irritated by how everything went down. On the bright side, my husband and sister-in-law are fully backing me up. They've been amazing through all of this, which makes dealing with my family a little more bearable. Oh, and I've actually sued my sister for that video she posted. Yeah, I'm taking her to court on the grounds of defamation. According to my lawyer, I've got a solid case. He says that by broadcasting all those lies about me, she's damaged my reputation, and that could have serious legal consequences for her. We're talking about possible damages for emotional distress and even loss of reputation. Apparently, she could end up paying a hefty fine or even being forced to publicly retract her statements. Serves her right, honestly. But that's not all. My aunt decided she wasn't going to let my parents off the hook either. She's suing them for manipulation and mental harassment. The lawyer thinks she has a good case too, especially with all the evidence of how they messed with her life, blocking her from seeing grandma, spreading lies, and basically gaslighting her for years. If things go our way, my parents might be looking at some serious legal repercussions, like compensatory damages for the emotional toll they've put her through. Since the lawsuits were filed, my parents have been in full panic mode. At first, they tried to fix things by calling and texting, saying how sorry they were and that we should drop the lawsuits for the sake of the family. When that didn't work, they lashed out, blaming me for everything. They said I was destroying the family and that I was just being vindictive. My dad even accused me of being ungrateful and spiteful, saying I was punishing them for trying to do the right thing. But honestly, I'm done with their guilt trips. As for my sister, she's been suspiciously quiet since she found out about the lawsuit. I guess she didn't expect me to actually take legal action. Her social media has gone silent too, which is a nice change from the constant drama she usually posts. My husband has been my rock through all of this. He's been supporting me every step of the way, reminding me that I'm doing the right thing by standing up for myself. His family has been great too, offering their support and helping me navigate this whole mess. Grandma and aunt are still living together, and from what I hear, they're both doing much better. They've been calling me regularly, checking in and offering their support. It's nice to have some family members who actually care about my well-being. I've been seeing a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. It's been helpful to have someone objective to talk to about all this family drama. She's been helping me set boundaries and work through some of the long-standing issues I've had with my family. Work has been a bit of a challenge. Some of my coworkers saw my sister's video, and there have been whispers around the office. Thankfully, my boss has been understanding. I explained the situation to her, and she's been supportive, even offering me some time off if I need it to deal with the legal stuff. As for my relationship with my husband, if anything, this whole ordeal has brought us closer together. He's seen firsthand how toxic my family can be, and he's been incredibly supportive and protective. We've had a lot of late-night talks about family, boundaries, and what we want for our future together. I know some people might think I'm overreacting by taking legal action, but honestly, I feel like this is the first time in my life I'm actually standing up for myself. For years, I let my family walk all over me, always giving in to keep the peace. But not anymore. I'm done being the family scapegoat. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. The lawsuits are moving forward, my family is in chaos, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm taking control of my life. It's not easy, and there are definitely moments when I second-guess myself, but overall, I know I'm doing the right thing. I'll keep you all updated as things progress. Update 2. Well, Reddit, it's been a wild ride since my last update. The legal wheels have been turning, and we finally have some results. Grab a seat, because this is going to be a doozy. First off, the defamation lawsuit against my sister. Drumroll, please. We won. The court ruled in my favor, stating that her actions were deliberate and malicious. She's been ordered to pay compensation for emotional distress. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to make a point. But here's the kicker, she's also been ordered to publicly retract her statements and post an apology on all her social media platforms. You should have seen her face when the judge delivered the verdict. It was like watching someone bite into a lemon. I know it's petty, but I can't help feeling a bit of satisfaction. After years of her twisting the truth and making me look bad, it feels good to have the record set straight. Now, on to my aunt's case against my parents. This one was a bit more complicated, but Aunt nailed it in court. She had text messages, old emails, and even some letters that showed just how much Mom and Dad had manipulated her over the years. It was wild. There were messages where Dad was telling Grandma that Aunt didn't care about her, and another one where Mom had actually pretended to be Grandma, telling Aunt to stay away. The lawyer went through everything, and it was pretty clear that my parents had spent years playing mind games with her. The court ruled in favor of Aunt too. My parents were found guilty of emotional and mental harassment. They have to pay her a significant sum in compensatory damages, which, let's be honest, is more money than they ever spent on me. Aunt also got a restraining order against them, so they're not allowed to contact her or come near her anymore. Honestly, I think she's relieved more than anything else. She's finally free from their control, and it's like this huge weight has been lifted off her shoulders. My parents tried to act like they were the victims the whole time, claiming they just wanted to protect the family. But the court wasn't buying it. At one point, Dad even yelled in the courtroom about how Aunt and I were ungrateful, how he sacrificed for the family, and how I'd been a problem child my whole life. The judge shut him down pretty quickly. It was kind of satisfying to watch, honestly. Now, here's where things get really interesting. After the court case is wrapped up, Grandma dropped a bombshell. She's decided to remove Mom and Dad from her will entirely. Yep, you read that right. She's leaving everything to Aunt and me. I was shocked when she told me, but she said it was the only way she could really move forward and feel at peace. I guess after seeing how much Mom and Dad messed with Aunt, she realized they didn't deserve anything. Aunt tried to tell her it wasn't necessary, but Grandma was firm. You both deserve this after everything, she said. Of course, my parents aren't taking it well. They've been trying to stir up trouble, but this time, they're going through my mother-in-law. Yep, they've been calling and texting her, trying to paint me as the villain and get her on their side. But let me tell you, my mother-in-law is no fool. She shut them down real quick. She even forwarded me their frantic messages. It's honestly kind of embarrassing how desperate they've become. After seeing how Aunt handled everything, I decided to follow in her footsteps and get a restraining order against my family. It was the right move for me. I don't want them pulling any more stunts, especially not when they're now trying to involve my husband's family. The restraining order gives me peace of mind, knowing they can't keep harassing me or anyone else in my life, for that matter. My sister, on the other hand, has gone completely off the grid. After the court ordered her to make a public apology, she posted the most begrudging, passive-aggressive statement you've ever seen, and then deactivated all her social media accounts. I heard through the grapevine that she's moved in with a friend and is refusing to talk to anyone in the family. Part of me feels a twinge of guilt, but then I remember all the years of torment, and the feeling passes pretty quickly. Work has actually been a surprising source of support through all this. After the court cases made local news, small town, big drama, my coworkers have been incredibly understanding. A few of them even shared their own stories of family drama. It's been oddly comforting to know I'm not alone in dealing with toxic family members. My husband has been my rock through all of this. He's stood by me every step of the way, even when things got really ugly. We've had a lot of late-night talks about family, boundaries, and what we want for our future. One thing's for sure, we're committed to breaking the cycle of toxicity if we decide to have kids of our own. Therapy has been a godsend. My therapist has been helping me work through all the emotions that have come up during this process, the anger, the guilt, the relief, all of it. She's been teaching me about setting healthy boundaries and how to process the grief of essentially losing my family, even if they were toxic. I've also started reconnecting with old friends from before I cut ties with my family. It's been nice to rebuild those connections and remember who I was before all this family drama consumed my life. A few of them have even apologized for not realizing how bad things were with my family back then. It's bittersweet, but it feels like I'm reclaiming parts of myself that I thought were lost. Grandma and aunt are doing well. They're still living together and seem to be enjoying each other's company. They call me regularly, and it's nice to have family members who actually care about my well-being. We're planning a trip together once all the legal dust settles. It'll be the first family vacation I've ever had that I'm actually looking forward to. As for me, I'm taking it one day at a time. Some days are harder than others. There are moments when I miss the idea of having a big, happy family. But then I remember the reality of what my family was like, and I know I'm better off now. I'm focusing on building my own chosen family, my husband, my in-laws, my friends, grandma, and aunt. It's smaller than my biological family, but it's filled with people who genuinely care about me and support me. And honestly, that's worth more than any inheritance or family name. So, that's where things stand now. The legal battles are over, the family dynamics have shifted dramatically, and I'm slowly but surely building a life free from the toxicity that defined my childhood and early adulthood. Update 3. Hey Reddit, it's been a while. I know I said the last update would be my final one, but so much has happened that I felt I owed you all one last update. So, here goes. First off, let's talk about Grandma's inheritance decision. As I mentioned before, she decided to remove my parents from her will entirely. Well, now we have all the details, and it's pretty significant. Grandma sat down with her lawyer and made everything official. She's leaving her house, which is in a pretty nice area and worth quite a bit, to my aunt. Along with that, she's splitting her savings and investments between aunt and me. It's not millions or anything, but it's enough to make a real difference in our lives. But here's the kicker, Grandma also had a family heirloom collection. You know, those things that have been passed down for generations? Well, she's leaving all of that to me. We're talking about antique jewelry, some valuable art pieces, and even a few rare books. Mom always used to go on about how these would be hers one day, so I can only imagine how she's taking this news. Grandma made it clear in her will that her decision was based on who she believed would truly appreciate and care for these items, rather than just see them as valuable possessions. She even wrote a letter to be read along with the will, explaining her choices. In it, she talked about how she regretted not seeing the truth about my parents sooner, and how she hoped this would help make up for some of the hardships Aunt and I had faced. Now, onto my parents' reaction. As you can probably guess, they didn't take this lying down. They've been pulling out all the stops trying to get Grandma to change her mind. At first, they tried the guilt trip route. They sent long, dramatic emails about family loyalty and how Grandma was tearing the family apart. When that didn't work, they switched to threats. They've been saying they'll contest the will when the time comes, claiming Grandma isn't of sound mind. But Grandma, bless her, saw this coming. She had her doctor perform a full cognitive assessment, which she passed with flying colors. She also had her lawyer present during the creation of the new will to testify to her mental state if needed. My parents' threats are pretty much empty at this point. Their latest attempt has been to try and turn other family members against us. They've been calling distant relatives, old family friends, anyone who'll listen, really. They're spinning this whole story about how Aunt and I have manipulated Grandma in her old age, trying to steal the family fortune. Most people aren't buying it, thankfully. A few distant cousins I barely know have sent me some nasty messages, but for the most part, people either don't care or have seen through my parents' lies. The most hilarious and pathetic attempt came last week. My parents actually showed up at Grandma's house unannounced, with a moving van. They claimed they were there to collect their rightful possessions before they were stolen. Grandma, being the badass she is, calmly called the police and had them escorted off her property. The officers even warned them about violating the restraining order. I wish I could have seen their faces. As for my sister, she's still keeping a low profile. Last I heard, she's moved to a different state and is trying to reinvent herself. Part of me hopes she's using this as an opportunity for some self-reflection, but I'm not holding my breath. Now, let's talk about the new family dynamics. It's been a journey, but I finally feel like I have a real family, just not the one I was born into. Grandma and aunt are still living together, and they've really blossomed. They go on little adventures together, take classes at the community center, and have even started a small garden. It's like they're making up for all the lost time. They call me regularly, and we have weekly video chats. It's the kind of warm, supportive family relationship I always dreamed of having. My relationship with my in-laws has grown stronger through all of this too. They've been incredibly supportive, especially my mother-in-law. She's become like a second mom to me, in all the ways my biological mother never was. We have regular family dinners, and they've even started including grandma and aunt. It's a bit unconventional, but it works for us. As for my husband and me, we're doing better than ever. Going through all of this together has really strengthened our bond. We've had a lot of deep conversations about family, values, and what we want for our future. We've even started talking about having kids of our own. The idea used to terrify me, given my family history, but now I feel like I have a solid foundation and support system to be the kind of parent I never had. We've made some big changes in our lives too. After all the drama died down, we decided we needed a fresh start. So, we moved to a new city. It's not too far from grandma and aunt, but it's far enough from my parents that we don't have to worry about running into them. I started a new job that I love. It's challenging, but in a good way. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm really thriving, both personally and professionally. My husband has been incredibly supportive of my career, just as I support his. We've also been working on building our own traditions. Things like Sunday brunches, game nights with friends, annual camping trips, small things that make life feel rich and full. It's so different from the tense, walking on eggshells atmosphere I grew up with. Therapy has been a huge part of this journey. I'm still going regularly, working through the lingering effects of my upbringing. It's not always easy, but I'm making progress. I'm learning to set healthy boundaries, to value myself, and to recognize and shut down toxic behaviors before they can take root. One of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this is that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, support, and mutual respect. The family I've built for myself, my husband, my in-laws, grandma, aunt, and the close friends who've stuck by me, they're my real family. They're the ones who show up, who care, who celebrate my successes and support me through the tough times. I won't lie and say I never think about my parents or sister. There are moments when I feel a pang of sadness for what could have been. But then I remember the reality of what was, and I know I've made the right choice. I'm not closing the door forever. If they ever truly change and want to make amends, I'll consider it. But I'm also not putting my life on hold waiting for that to happen. For now, I'm focused on living my best life, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. I'm breaking the cycle of toxicity and building something beautiful in its place. To everyone who's followed my story and offered support and advice along the way, thank you.